All right, so today I'm going to give a very short lesson on one basic principle of shadow work or shadow, and then I'll start working with people, one or two people, and then Ameyalli will be giving us a singing session. So one basic principle of shadow work is that basically you are, or your ego is, the opposite of your shadow, and your shadow is the opposite of your ego. And this is mainly true when you're at the lower end of the vibrational scale. So let me get into it just a little bit. If you think about it, you are an entirety. You are conscious and you are unconscious. There's a part of you that perceives what you're perceiving in your day-to-day life, and there's a part of you that knows way more than what you're capable of perceiving. And these two aspects of you are what creates the entirety of you, right? However, I need to cross that with the idea of vibrations. So when you have a very, very low vibration, I would say that your ego is probably the strongest. Your ego is your fake self, right? Your ego is the mask that you wear to survive day-to-day life, and you formed it through trauma when you were little. Your ego isn't who you really are. And for almost everyone, your true self is in your shadow. So let me just give you a little visual of a fake vibrational scale. This doesn't exist in real life, but you can say 1 is at the bottom and 10 is at the top. It's fake, I made that up. It doesn't really exist. But when you're at 1, you're probably suicidal and you want to end your life. And at 10, you are at your best life ever. You wouldn't change a single thing. Everything's great. And I would say at 10, you probably are your true self. You are integrated. So you could say at 10, your shadow and your ego are highly, highly, highly integrated. So you still have an ego, you still have a shadow, but they're so integrated that you're very, very healthy. Whereas at 1, you're quite unhealthy, right? So the thing about vibrations and ego is that the lower in vibration you go, the more your life is filled with lies. So another way to look at it is when you're at a vibration of 1, what you think are lies. And what you experience is shitty. And it's not true either. You're living a fake life that you created for yourself with a very, very low vibration, that where you feel like the victim, bad things happen to you, etc. And therefore you probably do want to kill yourself because you don't see the point of life. Whereas at 10, you can say that you're living in truth, because shadow is truth and ego is a lie. And the more integrated your shadow is into your ego, the more you have clarity, the more what you think is actually true. So what's an example of a lie? I mean, there are very simple ones, and I think we've all experienced it. Stuff like, oh, I'm afraid to quit my job because if I do, I won't be able to find a new job, right? And I'm afraid of that kind of loss of income or something like this. I think a lot of people can relate to that kind of thinking, where I'm afraid to leave this relationship. I know this relationship is unhealthy, but I'm afraid to leave it because I'm afraid of whatever is going to happen in the future. And those kind of lies keep you back, right? They keep you from developing. They keep you from being your true self. So when you're at a vibrational level 1, where you're suicidal, I would say that your ego is like the most strong ever. And therefore all of your thoughts are those kinds of lies. Does this make sense? Yeah, it's really hard to have clarity on what life is. So I'll just go to this. So you can say that when you're at level 1, you have a very, very strong ego. When you're at level 10, you have a very light ego. You still have an ego. If you're alive and you're human, you still have an ego, but you wear it lightly. It is something that keeps you alive, but it doesn't take over your whole system. Whereas at level 1, when your vibration's a level 1, like the lowest, then your ego has kind of like taken over your whole system. The lie of your untrue self has taken over your whole system, has become sort of like a parasite on your system. So another way to look at that is that the lower in vibration you go, the stronger your ego is. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of ego and shadow and the vibrational scale. So there's a difference in how strong your ego is depending on where your vibration is at. And therefore, when you're doing shadow work, it might mean something slightly different because your shadow is completely hidden when your ego is that strong. It might be almost impossible to do shadow work. Your shadows are highly integrated into your ego. So it's not that scary thing. You've done so much work on yourself when you're at a high vibration, so that the integration that you feel where your ego and shadow are not that different from each other. They're still different, but the feeling of the shadow work is different. That's what I want to say. And the other thing I think I feel in the air is a lot of misconceptions, according to me. You don't have to agree with me. I'm just telling you what my opinions are based on my life experience and my ability to perceive things. I think that there's a big misperception out there, a misconception that like your shadow is this ugly, weird, scary thing, and you have to take care of it. Whereas what I think of is your ego is a weird, ugly, scary thing. You better fucking take care of that, because your shadow always contains the truth. So if your ego is the conscious aspect of you that perceives life, you're like, I'm a human. You know, I live in this country. I like to eat these foods. Your ego perceives your life. The unconscious part of you, you're therefore AKA shadow, actually knows the origins of the universe, you know, knows why you came to earth to be embodied, knows what your spiritual mission is, you can say. So you also know that when you're in your ego, you feel kind of separated, right? You feel separated from other things. You don't think you're one with the wall next to you, right? You don't think you're one with a sidewalk. You think of yourself as separate. And you probably also know that that separation is what causes suffering. So I would say that your ego is necessary for you to survive. You don't want to blend in with the wall. That's not helpful in this lifetime. But what's the ultimate truth? Yes, the same stuff that creates you is the same stuff that creates the wall. And the same consciousness that created you is the same consciousness that created the wall. So there's this idea that you are whole, that you contain within you the aspect of you that understands the truth of everything, but also contains the part that forgot, is disempowered, and is scared of a lot of things. So there's just like this basic idea that like you are whole, you are both, you're conscious and unconscious, you are enlightened and not enlightened, you are both. And that's what kind of creates the game of life as a human, correct? Okay. So one way to see this is just a visual. This is not like the end all be all way of seeing things, but one way to see this is in this whole, therefore you have your ego and your shadow, but both create your whole. Does this make sense? Okay. And the bigger your ego is, the lower your vibration is. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So if you do shadow work, what are you trying to do? You're trying to incorporate your shadow more into your, let's say, identity or how you view the world. You're trying to incorporate shadow more into your conscious self, so that your ego becomes smaller and smaller. It will always be there, but it doesn't take over the whole pie. Whereas this kind of person is suffering. Does that make sense? Yes, this is the more suicidal kind of person, afraid of change, afraid of, well, what will my mom think if I don't want to have Thanksgiving at her house? You know, or you don't have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas, right? You have Christmas dinner. So like, what would my mom think if like, you know, if I don't want to have Christmas dinner at her house? Whereas this person might not care about that so much. And therefore life is easier. And here's the other thing, your unconscious creates your life, not your conscious. Your unconscious creates your life. So the unconscious part of you is the part that creates like kind of like the where you are at in the vibrational scale. So a lot of people do these meditations like, oh, I want to invite more abundance into my life. So they just like write, I invite abundance like 100 times, and they put it on their mirror, bathroom mirror, and they like brush their teeth looking at it. This doesn't do anything. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't do anything, because what are you doing? Your ego is like, I invite more abundance. I invite more abundance, but it's your shadow that creates your reality. Okay. So your ego is associated with lies, and your shadow is associated with truth. So the more you can incorporate your shadow into your so-called ego, the more you can make your shadow conscious, the more and more truth will be your life. You'll be living in your truth. You'll be in your power, and you'll have clarity. Like, you will see things as they are, and you won't be afraid of dumb things. I heard someone once talking about, he was in the States and he wanted to move to Mexico. And he said, I'm ready, but I don't think I can move there yet because my dogs. And I'm like, what do you mean about your dogs? And he's like, oh, I don't think my dogs would like it there. So I'm like, so you're just going to wait and live in the States until your dogs die and move to Mexico? Do you see? He gave himself a lie. Does that make sense? He lied about his dogs. That's just not true. But for him, the lower your consciousness is, the dumber you are, by the way. So that lie made sense to him. It didn't make sense to me, but it made sense to him. So that's why you really, really want to do the shadow work, because then you will be more in truth, and truth will make more sense to you. Whereas you've been there, right? And you've seen your friends where the lies make more sense to them. You know what I'm talking about, right? Where the lie makes more sense to them. And if you tell them the truth, they might get mad at you. It's like the truth is evil, right? Yes. Okay, we're getting all this. So one basic principle of shadow or shadow work is, like I said at the top, the lower your vibration is, especially, your shadow is the opposite of your ego. So let me give you an example of that. The lower your vibration is, almost guaranteed, you love being the victim. Guaranteed. This is like across the board kind of experience for people. And they're going to, through their unconscious self, their shadow, right? And so if you think about it, if your ego takes up a lot of space in the entirety of you, your shadow gets extremely repressed. You can consider this repressed. So when your shadow becomes really repressed, what I literally see happening is the energy goes, your energy and your shadow goes into other people's bodies and animates them. And those other people exterior to you in your reality start to act shitty towards you. They might steal from you. They might hurt you. They might threaten violence. They might threaten to end the relationship. They might threaten to cut you off financially if you're dependent in some kind of way. If you're really, really dependent upon them for some kind of approval, they'll threaten to cut off something that you're kind of like psychologically really dependent upon them. You know, if you've been, let's say, in a romantic relationship of 10 years, you might be really, really dependent, especially if you're a woman with a man. A lot of times you're dependent on the man seeing you more so than the other way around, due to the nature of femininity and masculinity. So like if you're in a woman's body and you're with a man, a lot of times you kind of need the man to see you. So if he threatens to not see you in some kind of way, he sees something that's not you, or he gaslights you, this kind of thing. That's not them. That's your shadow energy in them, creating the reality that matches the vibration of your ego. Does this make sense? Okay. All right. So back to this idea that your shadow is opposite of your ego is opposite of your shadow. If you like being the victim, if you're mad at this exterior person who maybe yelled at you, really yelled at you, maybe they took it a step too far, and usually they yell at you, but this time they grabbed your arm. Holy shit. Now it got physically violent, I would say your ego loves this story because it reinforces the vibration you're at. Let's say you're at vibration 2.5, close to suicide, you hate yourself, you have a lot of shame, you have tons of enemies, and lots of people are mean and bad to you. And for some reason, you can't seem to get ahead in life. Money is an issue, maybe sometimes like basic things like paying the rent or eating, this kind of stuff can be an issue when you're at a very, very low vibration. It's just a reflection of your vibration. What I mean that your ego is opposite of your shadow and the shadow is opposite of your ego, and you are actually that opposite. So your ego is, I'm the victim. Those bad people on the outside, they're doing things to me and I don't have power. I'm disempowered and I'm going to do healing work to take my power back. This is what a lot of people think. I think that's fucking bullshit. You don't fucking take your power back. You always keep your power. What you do is you put it in other people and they start acting nasty to you to reinforce the vibration that you're at. You never lost your power. You pretended you did though, because that reinforces your ego. Does this make sense? Okay. The thing that a lot of people use when they're at lower vibrations is entities. So if you have a very, very low vibration, I guarantee you have some kind of shame in your system. I guarantee it. And the shame entity you use to keep yourself at that vibration. You're like addicted to that shame entity. And so what you might do is use a helper entity, like an anger entity. That anger entity will go inside of the energy of someone else. The other self, that other person will yell at you. And maybe in that one instance I told you about, like, grab your arm, you know? Who's at fault? Is the other person at fault? They're an adult, right? They're responsible for their actions. It depends on how you want to look at it. On a 3D level, they are responsible for their actions and they shouldn't have done that, you can say. But on a spiritual level, on the shadow level, the level that I like to see things, you're 100% responsible for your reality. So every single thing that happens to you, even if someone steals money out of your purse, guess what? You're responsible. And how the F am I making that statement? Because this is an illusion. So when you're dreaming and you're running from the monster, you feel like you're not the monster and you feel like the monster is a scary enemy, correct? And then when you wake up, you realize, oh shit, that was just a dream. I was only dreaming. That was an illusion, but it was an illusion in your mind. And of course you were the monster. It came out of your mind. And you were also the character you chose to think of as yourself in your dream. But that was just almost like a flavor preference. Your flavor preference was victim as opposed to monster, but your brain generated both characters. This is the same. This illusion is the same. It comes from your unconscious mind, just like when you're dreaming. It's the same. Reality is completely plastic. And you'll see that if you keep raising your vibration, especially if you kind of do it quickly, which is possible, you'll see that things that, like, characters in this reality will change on you. People who are previously violators will become like lovable. It's kind of crazy because your reality reflects the vibration that you're at. And so you can also see that when you're dreaming, if you're running from a monster, that nightmare reflects something repressed in your shadow, most likely, right? So your dream told you the truth. Even if day-to-day life, you go to your office and you think you're fine, if you have recurring nightmares, you're not fine, right? That's what reality is for you. This dream tells you what your unconscious is feeling. So if you have a lot of monsters in your life, that's your unconscious talking to you. It's not like you're a real human walking through a real life. Some part of you needs to think that so you don't like walk in front of a bus and think it's okay, you know? Like some part of you needs to think that this is real so you kind of feel like you want to win, if that makes sense. Like you want to win in this lifetime. You have some skin in the game. I don't think anyone likes watching a basketball game where one side already decided that it lost and therefore does not play with its full heart, right? That's not a fun basketball game. So this is your life. This is your basketball game. If you already act as if you've lost, your life will suck and it won't feel fun. So thinking that it's real is somewhat important in order to have skin, you know, your skin in the game a little bit, you could say, or to want to feel like you're going to win. But is someone saying something?
Yeah, I was going to say it might be time to start working.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll wrap up. So this reality is not real. It's a dream, just like when you're dreaming at nighttime. Your reality reflects your shadow. And therefore, I encourage you to do something called shadow work, where you do a series of ego deaths and rebirths. And every time you incorporate something into the shadow or something in your shadow into your ego has to die because its previous idea of itself has to die. And then it goes from this, where your ego is really, really strong, to this, where your ego's not so strong. Shadow work requires a series of ego deaths and rebirths. And each time you do that, I guarantee you your vibration goes up, because when you incorporate shadow into yourself, you have more truth in your consciousness. Does this make sense? So your vibration goes up. That's what shadow work is. And in the example of the person who is like, oh my God, I'm the victim. What do you have to incorporate? You have to incorporate the idea, you're the fucking perpetrator, motherfucker. You're the perpetrator. You're perpetrating yourself. Your energy is going into other people and they're perpetrating you in a dream world. You're the monster. This is shadow work. Do you see how you've never lost your power? Okay, so that's the conclusion of the lesson. Who popped? What popped for people?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, that made perfect sense. Like my reality, how it's kind of like split. So like, what part of me is like quite trusting a lot of good things have happened, but my ego part still believes it's not kind of true, and it's like I still need to make another step. I still need to do something else. It's like I'm trying to force through my consciousness rather than actually do the work, like you say.
What was the first thing you said? Your audio sounds really garbled to me. What was the first thing you said?
So I'll say it again, that what you said makes sense to me because of I have like a split energy where part of me trusts and knows that things are working out and that things are okay, but the split other side of the ego is saying, no, you're not good enough when things are actually going really well. It's like it's a tricking me. So yeah, what you said did relate a lot to my journey, especially.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. So what I hear you saying is basically you see yourself feeling the lies, like you feel the lie frequency and it's present in your system, but you also feel the truth. You feel the truth frequency as well. Okay. And a lot of shadow work actually comes down to discipline. So the discipline here, for example, would be to make decisions from the truth frequency, even if the part of you that's shit scared is trying to black magic you into doing, let's say, the wrong thing, the thing that's not so good for you. You have to have discipline to stay the line and do the right thing that is true to you, to your true frequency. And for a lot of people, they just kind of give into the habit. They give into the habit of, well, even if this is sort of a lie frequency thing, it's worked for me for 25 years. So I'm just going to keep doing that, And the other thing is, it's not just about you. A lot of people are addicted to the life and the people that they collected at their lower frequency. And they don't want to lose the people and the life they collected at their lower frequency. So they're addicted to those people. And I'll say one more thing. I'll just say one more thing. Most people are not real. You don't have to believe me. This is what I believe. But most people are not real. So you're putting your energy into these humanoid non-people, and you're addicted to your relationships with them. To me, that makes really, really, really no sense. Because the higher in vibration you go, you totally meet more real people, I guarantee it. You meet more real people because they have a higher vibration. So when all of your friends and family are non-real people and they're going off their programming and they're stuck at a certain vibration and you're addicted to that, I mean, what the F is that? What kind of choice are you making for yourself there? And Stephen, I'm not necessarily talking to you directly. I'm talking to the general public. Okay, Dara, what popped for you? Do you mind sharing?
I don't. Hi, everyone. I feel like you said that directly to me. I could leave the call now. That's exactly where I'm at. And that's where my intention with doing the work with you has given me a lot of purpose an intention to fill my container so that I'm using myself as my guide, because I've been doing what you just said.
Could you say in your words what I just said?
You just said you're giving a lot of energy to people who are stuck on a frequency that I no longer identify with. I don't relate to it. I don't believe it. It's fake. It's hard. It's draining. And it's not my truth. And you saying, I don't know how you do that, is like, I don't either. I really get it. I get that. This is the growth. This is the work. Having my own container of resources to check myself, because I've been associating shadow work as blind spots that I don't see and need to fix in myself. I haven't had clarity around that. Like, I understand ego. I just don't really understand, or didn't understand before you described it or defined it, what the distinction is between ego and shadow. That visual really helped. I thought my shadow was my ego.
Right. Thanks for sharing.
Mm.
So a lot of people vilify their shadow. Do you understand that this reinforces your ego? And do you understand that in popular culture, this is the understanding of shadow? So popular culture has been black magicked in the head to something that makes no sense at all to me, that shadow is bad and ego is good, right? So clear, but somehow everyone agrees to the lie. So what do you think that says about the vibration of culture? What do you think that says about the vibration? I'm going to call you out. Psychology, Jungian psychology. What's the vibration of that? If it believes something that's not clear. So a lot of shadow work has to do with feeling the individuality of who you are, your true self. That's usually in your shadow until you've done a lot of this kind of work. And staying true to that, even if it means going against things like the society you live in and the culture of your family. Because sometimes the culture of your family is to be outside of your boundaries all the time. And like, people will get mad at you if you want to feel your boundaries and go according to your own personal boundaries. So it might mean rejecting your family or your family rejecting you. And this can be psychologically really, really rough for people who are not yet taking care of their own inner child, like, instead of seeking that from the outside. So if I take care of my own inner child, I don't need my mommy or my daddy to do that for me. But if I'm unhealed, I'm not taking care of my own inner child. And I literally want my actual biological mommy and daddy. I want them to see me. I want them to protect me. I want them to be like, I'm still the little girl who goes, look at me, look at me. Look at the drawing I made. You know, you kind of want biological mommy and daddy. I don't care if you're 45 years old. You still do this. Like, you want them to approve of you and see you, because you're not doing it for yourself yet. So a lot of shadow work brings you up into these levels where, yeah, you are mothering and fathering yourself better. Why? Because you are mothering and fathering your true self. Whereas your mommy and daddy are the ones who helped create your false self, right? Your ego was formed in the childhood home. So there's going to be a divergence, and a lot of people kind of can't handle it. And sometimes that's why they choose to live the lie. They choose to not have the death and rebirth and stay at the same ugly vibration. So remember earlier in the talk when I was like, you know, those people who like believe in the lie, it's easier for them. And I was saying the lower your vibration is, the dumber you are for serious. You choose to be dumb. And I see it a lot. And you probably see it in your friends who like don't want to leave, you know, abusive relationships or an abusive boss or something like that. And you know they have way more opportunities, but they pretend they don't or something, you know? Okay. there's a few more minutes. I'd actually like to work with someone. Who, Dara or Stephen, is there something you'd like to work on with me a little bit?
Like something specific? Can you?
Sure. I'm gonna, Stephen, we're gonna say something?
Yeah, I was seeing if my audio was okay.
Yeah, I have to say, the last time your audio was really tricky, so it might just be energetically that we don't have that much time anyway. So I'll just, if it's all right with you, I'll just work with Dara just a little bit if it's possible. And if it's not possible, we'll take our chances with you and your audio. Thank you. Dara, I'm gonna feel into one thing. You just give me your response. Does that work for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you have an entity that you weren't aware of before, and you see it in all the people around you, do you feel what that might be? Something that may have come up as I was giving the lesson, some sort of pop.
The pop for me was just a lot of ego.
Okay, the strength of the ego.
Strength of the ego. I'm around people who the majority of not around them. I'm managing through how to identify that and let it go. When it's there, I've been absorbing it into my bubble, and it's like ego meets ego.
Yeah. I'm going to point out something. I don't know if other people heard that. When you said, I've been absorbing it, the frequency of your voice changed and you went into victim mode. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's what I felt. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with me, but that's what I felt. And I'm curious if other people also felt that. As soon you were in your truth, and as soon as you're describing something, and what you're describing is, I've been absorbing it. And even if you were saying that in a really open-hearted way, there was like you kind of fell back into this old frequency of being the victim. Like, oh, okay. I'm the empath. Oh, I can't help it. I'm a victim to the people around me. Did you feel that?
Yes.
Okay. This is the feeling of the vibration of truth, right? And lie that Stephen was talking about in his system is very subtle. Dara was in a really empowered place and accidentally, habitually went into a disempowered place, even as she was saying a sentence that looked like it was empowered. Do people see that, feel that? Okay, so imagine us doing this repeatedly. That was a lie. That was a lie. And it wasn't the words coming out of her mouth, it was the frequency. This helps you gain clarity between what is your true self and your false self. This is literally, to me, this is shadow work. Does this make sense to people? Yeah, based on everything I presented earlier, this is shadow work, is honoring your true self and not believing the lie. Because if I'm like, oh my God, Dara, that's such a beautiful share, thank you. Where would we be at right now? We would be at the lower frequency of her ego. And now her ego has overtaken the work. Her ego has overtaken the work and now thinks that it is in charge or controlling what's going on here, right? Whereas true shadow work, the ego is dying. So Dara, we need to keep not feeding your ego. And every time it comes up, which, it'll take time and experience to understand when it's coming up for you, because it can be subtle for anyone, subtle for everyone, but not feeding it further, including in the work itself, because you can see how easily the work is hijacked. Shadow work can be hijacked by the mind, by the ego, like we just experienced here. So it's just having this discipline, like I said. Okay, so could people share what they learned today, their ahas?
Hi again. Audio
Hi.
okay?
Okay, so far.
Yeah, good. So has I have seen a lot of vibrational changes from where I was 8 years ago to now, which is really, really good because the people in my life that I work with and I'm around in the gym and things are all really much better people. So I still see I'm walking through the lie, where I'm working and stuff, and people are still
So I'm just going
at
to
a lower
pause you.
vibration.
I'm just going to pause you because even if you're getting to it, all of what you've said so far has nothing to do with what you learned today. It's like you're telling us something that you could have told us before the lesson started. And I'm not saying it's not valid, and I'm not saying it's not related. You're probably going to get to the point, but I want to pause you so that you're aware. You know, it's an unconscious, very subtle way of not being present, actually. So like, what did you learn today? I learned this. That's very present. But if you go, hey, in my whole entire life, you know, I've been doing a lot of work and I've seen a lot of changes. Do you see how that's less present? Do people feel the frequency?
Okay.
Okay, so it's okay if you need to like pause and take a moment, but like I learned X today. It probably does not have a story. One little baby lesson, I didn't talk about it today. It wasn't really part of today's lesson. Today's lesson was the lower your vibration is, the more your ego and your shadow are opposite, and you are truly your shadow. So whatever you see as your enemy, that's actually who you are. That was the lesson for today. But the other associated factoid is the lower your vibration gets, the more you're interested in drama. So you get really hooked on story. So that's why people like to go to talk therapy and talk about their story the whole freaking time. And they think that's healing, but you're masturbating the ego. So that's why I'm a little bit, let's not do story. I'm not saying it's not a valid story, you know, but let's just see if we can really be precise and be present. So if it's okay with you, Stephen, I'll just come back to you. So you can pause and just be like, I learned X today. Thank you. Dara, do you mind sharing what you learned today?
My ego needs to die.
What I heard you say was actually you felt the energy of your ego in a way that you didn't before because you just thought you were your ego. Does that make sense?
100%.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So as everyone can see today, to do shadow work, you have to be in your intuition. And everyone here today knows how much I was like, please be present so I can be present. I need to be in my intuition in order to hold space today and to give a lesson. This is why, because shadow work requires presence and intuition. And any of that mind frequency breaks the container. Okay. Stephen, what did you learn today?
I learned that I'm still talking through the past.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so people at home, that's the conclusion of the lesson that we're kind of doing in a group. So I encourage you to lay down, pause the video right now, lay down, and when you're ready to receive Ameyalli's singing, then start the video again. So
Dios poderoso gikano paramaki niwo paramajonki itai niwo kano mayontana. Shama midigo nai shama midigo shama midigo mura kushi midi senara kushi midi senara midigo ibo ake midigo ibo ashon rokotoronga iya rokotoronga Gaya Rongi. Roma Shui Koi no Go Roma Shui Koi no Go Roma Paya Gi Paya Yo Bai Gi Paya Nida Boa I no Go Roma Shui Koi no Go Roma Paya Gi Enraizamiento caía, enraizamiento mabuki. Hoi to ningi no ko hoi to ningi no ko hoi ro ro I pisha yon bai gi pisha ni da bo ai no ko rom payangi pisha yon bai gi maton trangashinambo maton chokaska no borongi. Pagabagi mia pagabagi Pakuji ajogi Pashinan yabi pondagi Shinan yabi pondagi Niwo yabi pondashon Kaya yabi pondagi Pond yong baingi ba ne te abanorongi. Samagira gon samagira samayabi pondegi samatabombo debe samaguji ajongi no gonjirik sanango midiko poderoso midiko amoroso midiko sumamente amoroso. Ho no te bo ani ho no te bo maton ho ma ba jon so wa yong ba ingi no ya ra urios bo ani ho mi dico no te illuminaya mati ni wo avano mati ewa di di irongi. Sandoroni mi roni ne te abano ronin kano jogagi choka yon baingi madon masajina bo madon maya ni wo choka choka baingi ronin ne te abano ronin kano jogagi choka yon baingi chokayon baingi chokayon baingi chokayon baingi chokayon maton trangashinambo maton me apoyo shimbo choka choka baingi choka nida boai choka nida boai chokayon baingi chokayon baingi miri koi boaki miri koi boaki miri koi boaki miri koi. Tori kabana wishing tori kabana noya tori hoyo ya soa yon baingi palo voladora da ne te illuminaya maton yora biribi maton ne te biribi maton kaya biribi rongi. Kushi kushi medicina no yarao medicina こほいそわわかのまいぼわまとやむかのらほえびあいまぎなまきなにぼかわのごおいぼかわまとやむかのらいきしゃまぎらまかのねすかのむざたいかのらかごとりほややいにんぼわかのらむざたいしょきや初期のまむざかいのこいろろいなとやむかのらなとかのむざたいにやがかえれべしょリオスポレロボギかのパラマギンギンにをパラマジョギンかのたにウランかのたにウランかのたにウランかのたにウランかのたシャマシャマミディコないシャマミディコなシャマミディコムラくじみりしならくじみりしならみりこいぶわきみりこいぶわきみりこいぶわきみりこいぶわきみりこいぶわきみりこいローマ水コイノコロマ水コイノコロマパヤキンパヤヨバイキンパヤニニラボアイパヤヨバイキンパヤヨバイキンパヤヨバイキンパヤヨバイキンパヤヨほいほいとににのこほいろいピジャヨンバイキンマドマザチナボマドンツォカスカノボピジャヨンバイキンピジャヨンバイキンピジャヨンバイキンピジャヨンバイキンピジャヨンPa que banquim, maton pa que banjon, pa yabi pont de king, china yabi pont de jon, ni wu yabi pont de king, pont de yon ba 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 king, pont de yon. Sama sama akira hako sama akira sama yabi pont de king sama tapon botibi sama kuje ajongi no conchiri sanango midiko poderos bo midiko amoroso midiko amoroso midiko ibuaki midiko ibuaki midiko ibuaki midiko ibuaki Ho notable, ani ho notable, mato ho mabanjon, so a yon ba inking, no yara orios bo, midi koibu aki, ani ho medico, nada illuminaya, mati newa didi, mati ewa didi, mati ewa didi, mati ewa didi, mati ewa. Santo, Santo Ronin B, Ronin Nutta Abanon, Ronin Kano Chokakin, Chokayo Bainki, Mato Masashina Bo, Mato Maya Niwo, Chokayo Bainki, Chokayo Bainki, Chokayo Bainki, Chokayo Bainki, Chokayo. Tori, tori campana, wishing tori campana, noya tori hoyoya, so ayo baiki, palobo la dorada, nete illuminayo, madon yora biribi, madon gaya biribi, madon nete biribi, mezakano vainki, mezakano vainki, mezakano vainki, mezakano vainki, mezakano. Inimico, wasta inimico, noi shamankin, amor in caía, amor propio caía, amor universal, a todos los seres intentes, a todos mis acabó. Waringita, mucha princesita, abundancia caía, matón suerte habano, alegría caía, matón suerte caía, felicidad caía, felicidades maboqui. Okay, the singing session is over. You should all take your time getting up, waking up, and open your eyes.
All right, so we're going to sign off. Goodbye, everyone. Stay there as long as you need.